Welcome to Stoic Conversations. My name is Caleb Ontiveros, and today it's going to be a short solo episode from myself. We'll have some guests in the upcoming episodes, and Michael and I will be back on schedule with some of our new conversations. We'll be diving into some medieval philosophy as well as other concrete topics. This episode is on mechanism versus aspiration. I came across an interesting line from Cedric Chin the other day. He writes at commoncog.com. It goes as follows. You can tell the seriousness of the person by how much time they spend talking about mechanisms versus aspirations. Discussions of mechanisms force you to think in terms of taking action, testing ideas, generating information. Discussions around aspirations tend to result in folks sitting around in a group chat, complaining about the world to each other. A commenter responds, hunter who talk about spear all day catch more food than hunter who only talk about feast. Not bad. It brought to mind this thought that philosophy is often abstract, general, universal, lofty. And it is focused on aspiration, defining the target, which is essential. But all these ideas do not lend themselves but all these ideas are not as detailed or concrete. But sometimes these discussions lack detail and are not as concrete as they should be. You can compare about the person, and philosophy is an especially tricky domain because, say, unlike in business or relationships, we are tackling difficult problems that are abstract, what it is to be happy, the nature of man, and so on. So I saw this comment as a challenge to be direct and speak at the right level of detail, something that is especially crucial when thinking about philosophical topics. I mean, it brings to mind the necessity of not just speaking about virtue, but breaking that down into cardinal virtues and breaking those down into smaller parts still, the sub-virtues, subcomponents of virtue. And that's something that the Stoics do. We have episodes on all the four cardinal virtues and one way that each of them are broken down. I'll link to that in the description. And I think this comment is this focus on mechanism versus aspiration. I mean, if you're breaking down a virtue into a subcomponent, of course, there's still that aspirational part. But you're getting closer to action, getting closer to something that's decision relevant. You're not just thinking about virtue, you're thinking about self-control. And then you say, okay, what are the different aspects of self-control? It's also known as moderation. Well, there's orderliness, propriety, modesty, self-mastery. And that breakdown gets more specific, brings up questions about how one exemplifies self-control, moderation in ordinary life. And I do think the Stoics were good about focusing on mechanism. They don't just discuss how to be less angry. There's a wealth of practical advice from Seneca and Marcus Aurelius about what one can do to become less angry, and that's the same for any kind of passion they identify. So we do our best to cover the details of Marcus Aurelius's meditations, both the principles and the practice, and have compiled our own list of Stoic practices. Michael recently put together a solid master list of his top 10. And these are Stoic practices that get one closer to mechanism. Mechanism understood as cause, what will actually bring about change. What's the effective cause, if you want to think about this in Aristotelian terms. thinking about matters in terms of final cause, purpose, the aspiration is not enough, though you do need both. And I think there's another useful distinction here around training versus performance. So when we talk about action, that's a broad idea, of course, but you can think about, but there's training, preparation, focusing on specific skills. You think meditation, study, journaling, reflection. But of course, there's also performance, and that's living day to day and making decisions in your career, relationship, and so on. Both of these are essential, and the Stoics offer resources for both. And as I say, there certainly is a failure mode. I can't say which failure mode is more present in terms of people who are lean towards philosophy. Perhaps in general, people tend to lean closer to the side of focusing too much on aspiration and not enough on mechanism. But of course, there is another failure where people focus too much on details, the concrete, what's in front of their face, and not enough on where they're going, not enough on defining what the good life looks like to them, and so on. Aspiration is important. You do need both the effective cause and the final cause, as it were. One useful model here from the French philosopher Pierre Hadot is that the sage is someone who can see and act with both the whole and the part in mind. They can act in terms of nature as a whole. If you think about this from the Stoic perspective, as a much larger organism, one is a part of something much greater that directs one action. But of course, you are not that thing. You are not nature. You're taking up a specific part of nature and you're a specific person. So you need to act within your own scope, even as that is informed by the whole. So you have that ability to see things at the right scale with the right perspective, not detached and only seeing things from above, at the same time not being so provincial and only seeing what's right in front of you. You do need mechanism for a purpose. Aspirations are needed to set the target, and then it's concrete practice, train, and performance is what's needed to get there. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Stoic Conversations. If you found this conversation useful, please give us a rating on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you use, and share it with a friend. And I'd like to thank Michael Levy for graciously letting us use his music. Do check out his work at ancientlyre.com, and please get in touch with us at stoameditation.com if you ever have any feedback or questions. Until next time.